Nathan Matthews claimed it was an accident, that he hadn't meant to kill his stepsister. Shauna Hoare, who was pregnant at the time, insisted she had nothing to do with it, but the jury did not believe them. It took them just 3 hours to decide the pair had conspired to kidnap 16-year-old Becky Watts and that they killed her in a sexually motivated attack.
Bex, if you can see this, get in contact. And if anyone out there knows something, just tell us. Just bring her home safe. If you've got her, then put her somewhere we can find her. We want her home, please.
On the evening of the 3rd of March, 2015, officers from Avon and Somerset Police received a confession. Not a tip. Not an anonymous call to a hotline. Not a rumor passed through a neighborhood. A confession from a man who had been sitting inside the investigation for 9 days. A man who had given statements. A man who had stood in front of cameras looking worried. A man who had watched a father break down at a press conference and had said nothing. That confession pointed officers to a single location. A shed. An outbuilding behind a terraced house at 9 Barton Court, Barton Hill, Bristol. A quiet residential street. Neighbors going about their evening. Nothing visible from the outside to suggest that anything in that neighborhood had gone catastrophically, irreversibly wrong. The officers arrived just after dark. Inside that shed they found bags and boxes. Sealed. Stacked. Arranged with what investigators would later describe, in their own words, as deliberate care. There was no disturbance. No chaos. No sign of panic or haste. Whoever had placed these items here had taken their time. Had thought it through. Had been careful. Inside those bags and boxes were the dismembered remains of a 16-year-old girl. She had been missing for 12 days. Her name was Rebecca Marie Watts. Everyone who loved her called her Becky. Now here is the detail that makes this case different from the moment those officers stepped back out into the cold Bristol night and radioed in what they had found. The man who put her there had been standing beside her family the entire time. He had sat with her grieving father at Crown Hill. He had appeared on camera looking concerned. He had given formal statements to the very officers now standing over those boxes. He had watched search teams go out across Bristol day after day. He had performed every note of grief with the kind of precision that does not come from emotion. It comes from planning. His name was Nathan Matthews. He was 28 years old. He was her stepbrother. For 12 days, while Bristol searched for Becky Watts, Nathan Matthews knew exactly where she was. Because he was the one who put her there. Before we go any further, you need to know who Becky Watts actually was. Not what happened to her. Who she was. Because that is the only thing that matters in this story. Everything else follows from it. Becky was born on the 3rd of June, 1998, in Bristol, England. She was the youngest child of Darren Galsworthy and Tanya Watts. Small and slight, with a smile her family said could fill a room before she even opened her mouth. Her family described her as a tornado, a hurricane, and a sunbeam all at once. But that warmth, that openness, it was not something she gave away easily. It was earned, and the people who earned it knew exactly how fortunate they were. When Becky was 3 years old, she was placed into foster care. The circumstances were complicated and painful, but her father Darren fought for custody of his daughter, and he won. She came home to Crown Hill in St. George, Bristol, a working-class neighborhood of red brick terraced houses and long, quiet streets. That was where she grew up. Darren would say, years later, that losing her felt like having your heart ripped out and stamped on. Darren eventually married a woman named Angie. Angie had a son from a previous relationship. His name was Nathan Matthews. He was 12 years older than Becky. The two families came together. Weekend trips, family dinners, shared routines. Darren came to love Nathan, he said, as if he were his own. That detail will matter later. Becky attended Summerhill Junior School in Bristol. Her teachers remembered a quiet and gentle child. Incredibly shy, one teacher recalled. But by the end of year 5, something had started to shift. She was finding her voice, coming out of herself. The years that followed were hard in ways that most people will never fully understand. After starting secondary school, Becky was bullied about her weight. Not occasionally. Not once or twice in a hallway. Severely. Repeatedly. Over a sustained period of time with no end in sight. By 2011, she had been referred to child and adolescent mental health services and diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. At her lowest point, Becky weighed just 6 stone. She could not attend school. Being in groups caused her such acute anxiety that for a period she received her education inside a hospital setting. 6 stone. She was a child, and she was already fighting harder than most adults ever have to. And yet she fought. Quietly, stubbornly, with the same determination she brought to everything in her life. By March of 2013, Becky was back to a healthy weight. The doctor who formally discharged her from CMHS recorded in her notes, and these are the actual words, that she was happy and joyful. During her time in hospital, she had made friends. One of them was a girl named Courtney Bicker, who became her closest friend. By the end of 2014, Becky was getting there. Really getting there. She had enrolled at KTS training in Bristol to complete her GCSEs. She was developing her own sense of style. Her stepmother Angie described her as really fashion-conscious, always looking immaculate. She had a boyfriend named Luke Oberhansley. They had been together since November of 2014. Luke would later tell investigators he had never known Becky to have any anxieties at all. To him, she had always seemed happy. Angie, who had helped raise Becky as her own daughter, said it simply. 2 different people, she told people afterward. Shy on the outside. Exuberant, alive, completely herself with the people she loved. We were inseparable, she said. On the evening of the 18th of February, 2015, Becky went to a Skittles night at Barton Hill Rugby Club in Bristol. She stayed overnight with a friend. Her friend Adam Dancy, 17 years old, would later describe those final hours. Really happy, he said. We were just messing about. Really laughing. The following morning, the 19th of February, Becky was dropped home at Crown Hill at around 8 in the morning. She was planning to sleep in. She had no plans for the day. She had no reason to think anything was wrong. She had no way of knowing that less than 3 miles away, a man she had grown up calling her brother was already preparing. Here is what the 19th of February, 2015 looked like in real time. 2 people. 2 sets of movements. Moving toward each other without either of them knowing how it ends. Except one of them did know. 8 o'clock in the morning, Crown Hill, St. George, Bristol. Becky arrived home. The house was quiet. She went upstairs to her room. She was tired after the night before. She had no plans except to rest. Earlier that same morning, Nathan Matthews and his girlfriend Shauna Hoare had already been out. CCTV cameras inside a Tesco store captured both of them purchasing batteries. Not for a television remote. Not for a household torch. For a stun gun. That stun gun was already packed inside a large bag Matthews had assembled before leaving his home on Cotton Mill Lane, Barton Hill that morning. Also inside that bag, handcuffs, rope, tape, and a mask. He knew exactly what he was going there to do. 11 o'clock in the morning, Crown Hill, St. George, Bristol. Angie Galsworthy left the family home for a hospital appointment. She suffered from multiple sclerosis and had regular medical commitments. Before leaving, she arranged for a key to be left outside the front door. Her son Nathan was coming over. 11 minutes past 11, Crown Hill, St. George, Bristol. 3 minutes after Angie walked out the front door, Becky sent a text message to a friend. Routine. Ordinary. Nothing in those words to suggest that anything was wrong. It was the last communication anyone ever received from her.
Then put her somewhere we can find her. We want her home, please. Oh, it's horrendous. It was hell on earth. It was. I was so desperate to get her back. I would have done anything. It was just ripping your heart out and stamping all over it. I lost nearly 4 stone in weight. I couldn't eat. I could barely keep water down. The anxiety of thinking that she was out there getting abused or assaulted, and your imagination absolutely running riot with horrible things that could be happening to your little girl, and she was my youngest as well.
Matthews and Hoare arrived at Crown Hill shortly after. What happened inside that house was later reconstructed through forensic evidence, phone records, CCTV footage, and Matthews's own admissions when questioned. Becky was suffocated in her bedroom. The prosecution stated she fought for her life. She was then stabbed 15 times. Matthews would later tell Bristol Crown Court that he had gone to Crown Hill because he was angry. Angry, he claimed, about the way Becky was treating her stepmother, that she was being disrespectful, endangering Angie's health. His stated intention, he told the jury, was only to frighten her, to teach her a lesson. He had brought a stun gun, handcuffs, a mask, and rope to teach a lesson. The prosecution called it what it was from the very first day of trial: a sexually motivated killing. Evidence recovered from devices belonging to both Matthews and Hoare confirmed a shared sexual interest in petite teenage girls. 12:45 in the afternoon. Crown Hill, St. George, Bristol. Angie returned home from her hospital appointment. Matthews and Hoare were still inside the house. They stayed as other family members arrived home throughout the afternoon. They were still there when Becky's boyfriend Luke arrived that evening, asking where she was. He was told they did not think she was in. Just after 8 o'clock that evening, Matthews and Hoare left Crown Hill. They drove back to their home on Cotton Mill Lane, Barton Hill. Becky's body was in the boot of the car. That night they ordered a takeaway. They watched television. They made phone calls to friends and family. Everything completely ordinary. Everything completely normal. While Becky Watts was outside in the boot of a car. The 20th of February, B&Q, Horfield, Bristol. At 12:51 in the afternoon, CCTV cameras captured Nathan Matthews walking into the B&Q store on Passage Road in Horfield. He purchased a circular power saw, a face mask, protective goggles, and gloves. Earlier that same morning, he had already bought drain cleaner at a local supermarket. Between the 20th and the 22nd of February, he and Hoare were recorded on multiple CCTV cameras across Bristol purchasing cleaning products. The dismemberment took place in the bathroom of the Cotton Mill Lane property. The remains were then placed into bags and boxes, driven to 9 Barton Court in Barton Hill, and arranged inside the shed of a neighbor named Carl Demetrius with the kind of careful order you give something you intend to stay hidden. Then Nathan Matthews went back to his life. And the next morning, he joined the search for Becky Watts. When Darren Galsworthy arrived home from work on the afternoon of the 19th of February and found no sign of his daughter, the first assumption was simple. She had gone out. Teenagers go out. But Becky's phone was still in the house. Her laptop was still in the house. Her tablet was still in the house. She had not taken any money. She had not packed a single item of clothing. She had not told one person, not one, that she was going anywhere. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 20th of February, Becky Watts was formally reported missing to Avon and Somerset police. The force made their first public appeal on the 22nd of February. The following morning, Darren Galsworthy and Becky's grandmother Pat Watts stood before cameras at a press conference in Bristol and appealed for their daughter and granddaughter to come home. What followed was some of the most difficult footage to watch that came out of this entire case. Darren tried to speak directly to Becky. "Bex, if you're watching this, please come home. We love you so much. And whatever you think, we can sort anything out. Don't matter. Just come home. Sorry. I can't." He could not continue. Pat Watts stepped forward and took over. "Hi, Bex. It's Nan. You can see your dad. He's a broken man. Just let someone know. Ring or text someone. And if you're a bit worried about coming back because of all this, come and stay with me for a few days." A social media campaign using the hashtag #FindBecky reached more than 2 million people worldwide. Over 100 volunteers turned out across Bristol to search parks, open spaces, and riverbanks. Avon and Somerset police ran 6 specialist search teams every single day. Experts were brought in from the National Crime Agency, the College of Policing, and National Missing Persons organizations. Search areas included Troopers Hill Nature Reserve, Netham Park, Ruate Hill, Tiarwam Valley, and Braddockswood. Detective Inspector Richard O'Cone recorded a direct video appeal, speaking not to the family, but to Becky herself. "You are in no trouble. We are all just worried about you, and we want to make sure you are okay. If you can just call home, one of your friends, or call us on 101, we can work with you to help work through any issues you are facing." By the time those words were recorded, Becky had been gone for days. And Nathan Matthews was standing right beside the family. Throughout the entire 12 days of the public search, Nathan Matthews was present. He sat with the family at Crown Hill. He appeared on camera. He gave formal statements to Avon and Somerset police in the early days of the investigation, telling officers that on the morning of the 19th of February, he and Shauna Hoare had visited Crown Hill, had not seen Becky, but had heard the front door slam and assumed she had gone out. Detectives recorded his account. Initially, they accepted it. He watched his mother grieve. He sat beside his stepfather at a press conference where Darren Galsworthy could barely form a sentence. He answered follow-up questions. He maintained every detail of the same story across 9 days of contact with investigators. Not one moment of that performance broke the case. What broke the case was CCTV. His face on a camera at B&Q in Horfield purchasing a circular saw the morning after Becky died. His face again across multiple Bristol stores buying cleaning products over 3 consecutive days. His face and Hoare's face at a Tesco on the morning of the 19th of February, the morning of the killing itself, buying batteries for a stun gun before they ever set foot at Crown Hill. The cameras recorded what the people around him could not see. And here is what must be said plainly about what that means. This was not a man who panicked after something went wrong and then scrambled to cover it. Every single element, the bag packed that morning, the batteries purchased before arrival, the saw bought the very next day, the cleaning products, the methodical arrangement of those boxes in a neighbor's shed on Barton Court, was deliberate, was executed with the same cold precision as the killing itself. The performance of grief that followed was not a reaction. It was a continuation of the same plan. On the 28th of February, 9 days after Becky went missing, Matthews and Hoare were arrested at their home on Cotton Mill Lane, Barton Hill. On the 2nd of March, they were rearrested on suspicion of murder. The following day, acting on Matthews's confession, officers arrived at 9 Barton Court, Barton Hill, and found what you heard at the beginning of this story. The murder trial opened at Bristol Crown Court on the 6th of October, 2015. Nathan Matthews, 28 years old, admitted killing Becky. He admitted dismembering her body. He admitted storing her remains in that shed at Barton Court. But he denied murder, entering a plea of manslaughter. His account to the jury was that he had only intended to kidnap and frighten her. That the restraints, the stun gun, the mask, all of it was simply intimidation. That what happened in that bedroom was an accident. The prosecution team, led by William Mousley QC, answered that account with 4 categories of evidence that took it apart piece by piece.
After all the chilling evidence they've heard, the family of Becky Watts came to court hoping her killers would get lengthy prison terms. Statements from her parents were read to the judge, describing what they called the unbearable nightmare of the teenager's murder. Becky's mum said knowing that Nathan Matthews and Shauna Hoare had dismembered her body after killing her made things worse than a horror film.
CCTV footage placed Matthews and Hoare purchasing a power saw, drain cleaner, cleaning products, and stun gun batteries in a sequence that tracked precisely against the timeline of the killing and its aftermath. DNA profiles belonging to both defendants were recovered from items found at 9 Barton Court alongside Becky's remains. Digital evidence extracted from phones and computers belonging to both Matthews and Hoare confirmed what the prosecution stated from day one: a sustained, documented, shared sexual interest in petite teenage girls. And forensic specialists testified that the nature and extent of the dismemberment indicated 2 people working together. One person working alone could not have done it. The jury retired to consider their verdict. 3 hours and 27 minutes later, they returned. On the 11th of November, 2015, Nathan Matthews was found guilty of murder. Shauna Hoare was found guilty of manslaughter. Both received additional convictions: conspiracy to kidnap, perverting the course of justice, preventing a lawful burial, and possession of prohibited stun guns. Sentencing took place 2 days later, on the 13th of November, at Bristol Crown Court. Mr. Justice Dingemans was visibly emotional as he concluded his remarks. He spoke directly to Matthews. The evidence demonstrated clearly, he said, that the planned kidnapping had been sexually motivated. He described Matthews as fixated on petite teenage girls, and noted that Hoare had been drawn into the plan. He acknowledged with evident feeling the extraordinary dignity Becky's family had shown throughout the most difficult proceedings imaginable. Nathan Matthews received a life sentence with a minimum term of 33 years before any consideration of parole. Shauna Hoare received 17 years. Both appealed in June of 2016. The Court of Appeal rejected both applications, finding no reasonable grounds to question the convictions or the sentences. Carl Demetrius, whose shed at 9 Barton Court had been used to store Becky's remains, received 2 years. His girlfriend Jean Parsons, who owned the property, was sentenced to 16 months. There is one detail from the sentencing that deserves more attention than it ever received in the coverage that followed. The 33-year minimum given to Matthews was calculated in part on the basis that he was, in the legal terminology used by sentencing guidelines, of previous good character. That phrase means no prior convictions. And under those guidelines, judges are required to treat a clean record as a mitigating factor, even in cases of premeditated murder. But this trial laid out evidence of an obsession that had accumulated over years. Material recovered from devices, a documented pattern, a plan specific enough to include a bag assembled with restraints, a stun gun, handcuffs, and a mask on the morning of the killing itself. Previous good character in this case meant one thing only. He had not been caught yet. That is not the same thing as no prior harm. The system does not always see that difference clearly enough. On the 17th of April, 2015, before any trial, before any verdict, before any of the courtroom proceedings had begun, Becky's family said goodbye. Her funeral was held at St. Ambrose Church in Whitehall, Bristol. The same church where Darren and Angie had been married. The same church where Becky, dressed in blue as a bridesmaid, had been photographed smiling on her father's wedding day. That photograph exists. A young girl in blue, grinning, completely and wholly alive. Darren called the service a celebration of his daughter's life. Afterward, close family and friends gathered for a private burial at Avon View Cemetery in Bristol. In his tribute, Darren remembered the girl who had come so far, who had fought through years that would have ended most people, who had found her style and her confidence and her joy, who had been, in his own words, always looking immaculate, who had been, in every sense of the phrase, getting there. Becky has left a huge void in our lives and in the nation. We love you so much. In February of 2016, a wooden bench was placed at Goats Field near her home on Crown Hill, St. George, a quiet stretch of open ground where anyone passing by can sit and remember the girl who grew up on that street. In March of 2016, Darren published a memoir about his daughter. He titled it Becky. It was later reissued under the title The Evil Within. He said he wrote it for one reason, because the headlines had taken his daughter and reduced her to a crime. He wanted to give her back her life. He wanted people who heard her name to think first of who she was, not what was done to her. After the verdict came in, Becky's mother Tanya Watts, her grandmother Pat Watts, and her brother Danny stood together outside Bristol Crown Court. They had one thing they needed the world to hear. We loved Becky. She was a beautiful, happy, funny, fiercely caring, loyal, and witty girl. She came into your life and made you feel alive. A 16-year-old girl from Bristol fought through years of illness and bullying and came out the other side laughing at a Skittles night with her friends the evening before she died. She was planning her future. She was finding her style. She was falling in love. She was getting there. She deserves to be remembered for that. If this story stayed with you, if Becky stayed with you, share this video. Because a real girl lived a real life and fought hard to live it well. And the very least we can do is make sure more people know her name. If you are new here, subscribe. Every week on this channel we cover cases like this one, told with the respect and the care that the people at the center of them deserve. Hit the notification bell so you never miss one. And if there is a case you think deserves this kind of attention, drop the name in the comments below.